Should the government have been more forceful in combating the use of hate symbols and other anti-Semitic displays at the regular pro-Palestinian protests?
As you know, Kieran, we changed the law to make hate symbols unlawful. We changed the law to make the Nazi salute unlawful. We've changed the law to make sure that things that used to be tolerated, back when we had a previous government was trying to weaken our laws against hate speech, this government has been strengthening our laws that give police a stronger hand against anti-Semitism. Separate to that, we had legislation only go through last week through the Parliament that dealt with anti-doxing, that dealt with the financing of terrorism. I wish the Coalition had voted with us for those stronger laws that help combat anti-Semitism. For reasons that only the Coalition can explain, they voted against those bills being made law in Australia. In addition to that, for the first time, Australia has a special envoy for anti-Semitism. I've been dealing directly with Gillian Segal. She is doing a first-class job in working with the community and also coming to government with an independent lens and giving us advice on what she thinks needs to be done additionally. That's why, you know, we have seen widespread welcoming of the announcement of the task force. The task force that, as I said, I was standing up with the Prime Minister, the Attorney General, the head of the Australian Police Force and the Director General of ASIO when that was announced.
The opposition leader has also, and I'm going to these critiques methodically here because they've been regular and consistent, as you know they have been, but Peter Dutton has said that your government's approach to Israel is also abandoning Australia's Jewish community. What do you say to that? And also Alex Rivchin from the Australian Board of Jewish Deputies, he says that the Foreign Minister was out of line in critiquing Israel in the same breath as she did China and Russia.
The Foreign Minister made clear that every country should abide by international law, and she gave references to other countries where people have been calling for international law to be abided by, and that's what the Foreign Minister said. And that's exactly true. Like, we don't have a position as a nation that international law is a pick and choose thing. It's something that should be abided by every nation in the world. And you know, even if you go to the some of the community leaders who've been on Sky News, as I understand it today, you can have a view of different aspects of what the current government of Israel has done and express that view while still showing full support for the Australian Jewish community. People are going to have different views on a conflict on the other side of the world, but there is no place for hatreds of the other side of the world being brought here in Australia. No place for that at all. People can have their views on the conflict, but there is no space and zero appetite for hatreds to then be brought Australian against Australian. And the government's been resolute on that. We have changed the law to make the powers of the police stronger on that. And the statements from the Prime Minister, from myself, from the Attorney General, from Josh Burns as the local Member of Parliament, have all been completely at one on that.
One of the things that the Coalition has said as well is that the message has not been sharp enough in combating anti-Semitism over months. Things like the fact that the Coalition argues the government always has said anti-Semitism is unacceptable, as is Islamophobia, that it was always one alongside the other, when quite clearly at the moment one is at a greater crisis and needs more attention than the other.
Both of them had a spike following the atrocious attacks by Hamas on October 7. Both of them had a spike, and therefore there was a vote in the Parliament where the resolution dealt with both forms of bigotry. All forms of bigotry are unacceptable in Australia. Anti-Semitism is unacceptable, and Islamophobia is unacceptable, racism is unacceptable, sexism is unacceptable. All forms of bigotry are unacceptable. There are two where we saw a spike in October of last year. And so the government, when it's been talking about challenges with social cohesion, has frequently spoken about both, because both matter. In terms of responding to the attack on the synagogue, that was clearly an anti-Semitic attack. And in the statements that you've heard from the government and from me, there you deal with exactly the form of attack that is in front of you. That was anti-Semitic, it was unacceptable, it has no place in Australia, and I hope they find who was responsible and throw the book at them.
Yes, and finally, let's conclude, if we can, on this incident, the latest one in Wallara. As someone who grew up in Sydney myself, as did you, it's not the city that we know, that sort of behaviour. Are you worried about this spate, this increase in the scourge of anti-Semitism that we're seeing right now?
There are some thugs who belong behind bars, and there is a connection between any rise in anti-Semitism and a rise in violence. We know that from history. And so we don't only speak out against the violence, we speak out against the bigotry as well. For the people engaged in the violence, I hope we find them and throw the book at them. For anyone involved in hate symbols, anyone involved in feeding the poison that is anti-Semitism, we have laws now in place in Australia that allows the police to throw the book at them as well.
Home Affairs Minister Tony Burke, I appreciate your time.
Great to talk to you, Kieran.